Giants Nation, what is cracking, y'all? Good to see y'all in the building. We got another episode of the Giant Overreaction. I'm kind of calling these the light edition because they're kind of like right before we do the episode 4 of Hard Knocks and whatnot, just to kind of get people's anticipation, get all the jitters out the way and whatnot so we can go into this episode tonight, watch it with a calm demeanor and whatnot. Big shout out to the gang, man. I appreciate all y'all pulling up, rocking out with me, man. We've been, the subscribers on this channel have just been absolutely going crazy the last couple of weeks here, man, and I just think that's a, you know, just kind of shows how much grind and how much work we've been putting into these streams and just trying to keep these things, you know, on course and in the most driest point of the offseason as well. But today we got a lot to talk about. We're going to try and fly through it. The link is pinned to the stream. Y'all know what it is, man. Any newcomers who pull up and come in here and whatnot, direct them to the right, you know, place to go and show them where the plug is at. Today we're going to talk a little bit more about Saquon Barkley after that interview with Diana Rossini of The Athletic. We're going to be talking about Evan Neal and the offensive line as well. We got to talk about Joe Schoen and the process of this rebuild and how fast it's going. How much longer do we have to wait on this? Definitely got to talk about some injuries. Something I was just listening to as I was actually getting ready for this stream. I heard Dan Orlovsky. He was on the Pat McAfee show. And he said, when in the history of the league have you ever seen a player whose style had to be completely changed that it actually worked out for him? And I got to thinking, I really could not think of many quarterbacks. And I know that is normally a saying that kind of comes with guys who are more of a dual threat, like to run the ball, you know, can do things in the inside and outside of the pocket and whatnot. But it made me think about Daniel Jones and what happened to him, you know, during the Joe Judge and Jason Garrett tenure. You know, so much emphasis on trying to change his play style and make him a less reckless, less turnover-worthy type of quarterback. And in return, you know, we get the more safe style of quarterback who is unwilling to push the ball down the field. That has been the narrative around Daniel Jones for the past 4 seasons, everything outside of his rookie season. So something to think about as we go off into these Giant overreactions. Again, man, big shout out to all of y'all for pulling up, rocking out with us today, man. We got a great episode on deck here. We're going to be talking about Hard Knocks as well. Episode 4 tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you need the plug, you know what it is, man. I'm pointing y'all in the right direction, man. If you see this stream later on, maybe a couple of days down the road, just check the link that's pinned. It's going to put you in the right direction. Right off the bat, man, you know, before we get off into this Hard Knock stuff, I kind of got some bad news to talk about here, and that's Evan Neal, man. Evan Neal is on the PUP list entering training camp, which starts tomorrow. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. The New York Giants will be taking the field in front of the fans, and training camp begins, and you're not going to have Evan Neal there. And I dug up a couple of numbers on Evan Neal that are just, I know a lot of people have given up on him, and I think rightfully so. You know, when you spend that kind of capital on a draft pick, a guy that you expect to come in and be a plug-and-play type of player and improve this offensive line, and those things aren't happening, I definitely think that somebody's going to have the finger pointed at them. And if it's not Evan Neal, then you got to look towards the coaching staff with Bobby Johnson, who is no longer here with us. And you got to look at Brian Dable, and you got to look at his front office for drafting him. I think that's very important. But I hate to start the show off with some bad news, but that's what it is, along with Aaron Robinson, the cornerback who's pretty much been on the PUP list for his entire Giants tenure. It's unfortunate to see these two guys start the year off like this, and you all know also Theo Johnson is going to start off camp on the PUP list as well. They said he could come off at any time. But for Evan Neal, in 7 games in 2023, he had 3 games where he allowed 6 or more pressures. He's got 82 pressures allowed and just 843 career pass blocking snaps. Now, the Giants did go out there. They signed Jermaine Illuminor. To my delight, I was extremely ecstatic about that, thinking he was going to come in and be our solidified right tackle until we could figure out what we were going to do with Evan Neal. A lot of people talking about maybe pushing him inside to play, you know, a little bit of guard work and whatnot, which I think could possibly be another mistake. He is a big stature kind of guy, doesn't have quick feet. I just can't imagine a guy like Evan Neal getting out in front of some of these running plays, pulling in front of a running back. It just doesn't seem like something I see that is plausible. But you signed Jermaine Illuminor to a 2-year, $14 million deal. And it's already starting to look like injuries could absolutely derail the New York Giants season before we even get to camp here. And, you know, with Evan Neal, we've been dealing with this for his entire tenure here with the New York Giants as well. Dealt with an injury the first year, was pretty much injured for the last 9-10 games last year. Came back for 1 game, and that was it. That was murder she wrote right there. Now, the Giants did bring in former Las Vegas right guard Greg Van Roten for a workout. And this was before they announced that Evan Neal was going to be on the PUP list. Now, I dug into some numbers on Greg Van Roten, and He allowed just 21 pressures last year on 626 pass blocking snaps. He allowed 5 sacks. His pass blocking grade per PFF was 77.4, so that's really good. That's up there with Jermaine Illuminor. And his run blocking grade was 68.5. That's on 1,025 snaps. So I do think that that's a guy we could bring in here. Something I think the Giants probably should have addressed already. Y'all know I've been banging the table before Dalton Risner was signed back to the Minnesota Vikings that he would have been a good depth piece to bring in for the Giants, relatively cheap. The Giants decided to not go that direction. And here, when you get this injury with Evan Neal, not a new injury, but just an injury that's going to hold him on the PUP list to start the season off. Now we're considering bringing in some more help. And this is exactly what derailed the New York Giants. I won't even say season, but the potential of the offensive line last year was the injuries. We didn't have any depth out there. Now, I saw a couple of homies on my social media saying that this could be a blessing in disguise by forcing Evan Neal to the bench. And I think if you need these type of moves to put the Giants in a position to understand that they're too stubborn to make the move if Evan Neal was healthy, I think that says a lot about what's going on in the front office. Now, y'all know me. I'm going to be patient. Joe Schoen has asked for patience. I'm going to give him a little bit of patience and, wait until this season is complete before I can go out there and really start to judge what he's done so far in these first 2 years and first 3 drafts. But I do think that clock is ticking. We definitely going to get there. And talk about that a little bit more down the line in the episode here. And again, to those of y'all that are just pulling up, I see some more people just showed up in the building. If you need, the plug to get to be able to see tonight's episode, the link is pinned to the chat one time. Let me just check what's going on in the chat, and then we'll keep things pushing here one time. Shout out my guy one time, 59 Ways to Groove is in the building. What's going on, fam? I see the homie one time. Michael Knight is in the building one time. What's going on, fam? Hope all is well. Real people already saying thank you for the hookup. You know what it is, man. I'm the plug man, trying to bridge y'all into that authentic, whatever it is. Anything authentic, I'm going to try to bridge that gap and get y'all there. So big shout out to real people one time in the building. I see the homie Kareem Yee is in the building one time. What's going on, fam? I see you with the biceps. Kyle Gluckeny says that link does. Oh, it does. That link does what it does. Trust me. And if it's not, just keep your eyes on it. I'll make sure to get it updated. But, that link should be doing what it do one time. But shout out to Kyle for popping up in the building. I see Fryer is in the building. What's going on? My homie Peter's in the building, was plugging us on Twitter like a true boss. Appreciate that, fam. Fryer says that Neal has to stay up. Neal has to stay up, pup, until he is 100%. I don't want him to rush back and cloud our judgment. It's year 3, time to nut up or shut up. Illuminor at right tackle. I like that. And I think that, with the Giants putting Jermaine Illuminor at left guard during minicamp and whatnot, I don't know why they did that. Hopefully that's just a little bit of smoke. Maybe that's a little bit of mentorship, showing some of these guys the ropes for Carmen Brasillo's offensive line and the kind of ways he likes to maneuver and whatnot. I think that's the best vibe for the Giants is go out there and put Jermaine Illuminor at right tackle. I don't care if Evan Neal is healthy. I think Jermaine Illuminor is the better player right now. Peter says that Rotten signing has now been marked urgent. Yeah, and I saw you, banging the table about that on Twitter as well. I'm right there with you on that. The Beard is in the building. What's going on, fan? The best co-host in the country. Says Jaden Daniels episode. Let's go. Jaleesa's in the building, another Commanders fan. I told you I'll be seeing your waves. I know y'all up there at Top Golf. Hit them straight. Hit them straight. I wish I was out there with y'all to show y'all how this goes down. And the Beard says, nice hat, authentic. Shout out my homie Cernock, man. Bless me with 4 dope vintage New York Giants hats. That's the plug one time. If you are interested in how I get all these snapbacks and all that, just reach out to me on Twitter, man. I'll point you in the right direction and get you to Cernock's eBay page and all that. I got so much heat from him, man. Like, I can't wait to rock some of this stuff, some of this 90s stuff that y'all youngins have never seen. But shout out to Beard one time. Let me see. Peter said that guarantee you won't see PUP list and the plan afterwards on Hard Knocks. I bet that's a fact. Hard Knocks has been, and I wish this wasn't the case, but Hard Knocks has been a little bit like just kind of treading the waters of blurring the lines a little bit. And I'm not a fan of that. I'd rather them just tell it how it is. We saw it with the Jaden Daniels clip last episode. We saw it with the trailer clip with this episode, even with the conversations that are being had with the Patriots general manager and whatnot. And we're going to talk about that a little bit too as well. I see Bookend Tackles is in the building. What's going on, fam? He said year 3, we should start to see some of his draft picks proven out. Yeah, we need to see that like ASAP. That needs to happen right away. These first couple of drafts, I'm going to talk about that a little bit as well, but these first couple of drafts really don't got no players that are hitting the ground running, in a superstar kind of facet. So we'll see how that goes. I definitely got some notes on that. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. Hang tight. Appreciate you pulling up, Bookend. I see Seven is in the building one time. He said Neil is pissing him off. Shout out my guy solving the race problem one time in the building. He said, watched your video on the SI channel. Keep putting in that work. Looking forward to the documentary. Salute, man. Salute. You've been here for a while, fam. Appreciate you rocking with us and supporting. Big Dash Nose is in the building. What's going on, Dash? Y'all make sure y'all go subscribe to Dash. Dash, I see you, bro. You killing it right now, man. It's good to see, one of my kind in the New York Giants community up and rising like that, man. Represent for us out here, man. So big shout out to Dash, man. Y'all go subscribe to this channel. Big shout out to the Illa one time, too, man. Put out another dope video today, man. A little short, quick burner one time, man. It was like a clip worth. Definitely was digging that video. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today, too, the Illa, man. Appreciate you pulling up, fam. Let me see. Bookend says, I'll give Neil a chance under new coach, but if some mistakes with stunts, etc., then it's the yank. I'm with you on that, too. Shout out to homie Zeke one time. He said, what up, beloved? Neil on PUP is a blessing. A lot of people are saying that. We're going to see how that goes. I think the only thing that, we could question with Neil on a PUP list is if somebody else gets injured, who's coming in? Who's going to be that swing tackle? Who's going to be that swing guard that if somebody gets injured is going to be able to step up and keep this offensive line in a salvageable type of fashion? So we'll see how that goes. John May says, is Neil still recovering or did he re-aggravate? They didn't put out too many details on it. I'd imagine he's still recovering, but somewhere along the lines probably had some kind of aggravation to the injury, I'd imagine. But if he was on track, he'd be healthy. They've been saying it all off season that Neil would be ready to go. He was on track, and sure as shit stinks, he's not ready to go. So we'll see how that goes. Old man Rob says, I think Neil is now a bust. It's looking like it. We got to give him the season, but I'm definitely with you on that. I feel you're starting to get very grim right now. But shout out to all of y'all, man. Giants Nation is definitely in the building, man. Y'all know what it is, man. Appreciate y'all pulling up, rocking out with me. All the new gang in the building, man. If you digging the vibes after the show is over, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Keep up to date with everything we got going on over here, including the documentary, the in-season documentary. So we'll see how that goes. Shout out Jeremy Secker one time in the building before we get moving here. He says swing tackle has been a problem for this team for a long time, man. They banked on a lot of youth, being able to step up and be those depth pieces for this offensive line. And we saw that completely go to shit in the Miami Dolphins game this past season and saw some of the worst left tackle play we've seen, since I've been watching New York Giants football. Forget New York Giants football, since I've been watching football. And everybody knows who tunes into this channel that I'm a fan of the New York Giants, but I'm a fan of the game as well. I was a fan of football first and then migrated into being a fan of the New York Giants. And the last decade has been that. Like, we've been struggling to have not only good starting tackles out there and bookend cornerstone pieces, but the depth pieces have been unreliable and also getting injured as well. A bunch of injury-prone players and players who have not developed. You can put some of that on the players, but you got to put some of that on the staff as well. But big shout-out to Jeremy for pulling up, man, and rocking out with Authentic and the Beard Gang one time in the building. All right, y'all, let's get right into it. Got a couple of topics I want to talk about. I do want to check on that link, but just keep your eyes peeled on the link. I'll make sure to update it here in a second. When I play a longer clip during the episode, I'll go in and I'll update the link and just make sure it's good to go. But it should be good to go. And if it's not, you can just check back on one of the other streams that I did, episode 2, episode 3. The link is in there as well. It's the same link. So, yeah, go ahead and help yourself out. Get to the plug so everybody can, watch today's show. But let's get off into this next topic here, man. Like I told y'all at the opening of this one, Diana Rossini did interview Saquon Barkley on The Athletic. The episode came out just this morning. Fantastic episode. It wasn't just like a short teaser type of interview, too. Had some lengthy talking points on there. So big shout out to Diana Rossini on that and Saquon Barkley for, at least giving some fans a little bit more insight from the opposite side of the coin. But this is a clip from that interview that stood out to me. Check this out.
He made a comment said that it took 10 years off his life. Like, if it took 10 years off your life, what do you think it did for me? Yeah. But, like, they made offers to me, but it was like, my offer, I never really got a true negotiation because, like, Daniel got the deal done before the tag deadline. Literally, he got it done it
was almost on the minute.
Yeah, and then I got tagged right after. Dex and Andrew got their stuff done, but, like, it was different. Like, they didn't have, like, to worry about, like, they can go in there and negotiate. So, like, for us, like, I never feel like we really got a fair negotiation once I got tagged. Like, they send me something before the tag deadline and didn't agree with it. Felt like the guaranteed money wasn't there. All I asked was, like, I'm fine with this contract. can we just guarantee the first 2 years? They tagged me, and I was like, I already know how this is going to go. They said, listen, sit down. Joe was like, I'll talk to the ownership, this and that third, we'll get back to you. And then crickets. It was like, all right. And then after that, like, it kind of was like, I didn't like because I get the business, but it's like they have the tag, right? So when they tag me now, they have all the leverage. And it's just like, all right, I get you have all the leverage and you should do this, like you're doing your job. But at the end of the day, like, can I get some respect too? Like, just, can we get this thing going? Like, can we find a way, like the same way how you found a way to get DJ done, how you get Dex done, and Andrew done? Could we have found a way to get me done? But that's in the past. I don't really care about that because ultimately, like, I got tagged, played for the 10 mil, and then I end up getting more money. Like, I end up, like, that's why you like, at the time, it seemed like it was a disaster, and I'm like, oh man, like, I gotta do this. But in reality, like, I bet on myself, and I came out on top in that scenario.
So Saquon there talking about how he bet on himself and you ended up coming out on top and whatnot afterwards. I do agree with some of the statements there. I think with the negotiation stuff, everybody kind of knew that was the deal. The New York Giants and Joe Schoen especially were not going to match that offer that the Philadelphia Eagles gave to Saquon Barkley on a 3-year deal. And I still feel like this is still like, is the dress blue or is the dress whatever? Because like, you go online and so many people have so many different opinions on this as if they're seeing a totally different episode. And I do think that most of the fans that kind of want this buried in the past and, you know, they just want this Saquon talk to be over with. I got to call a spade a spade. I just think a lot of people are just bitter that it didn't work out with Saquon Barkley here because we had less talk about the quarterback getting paid and falling short and also being injury prone than we did about this Saquon Barkley contract. I see a lot of people trying to pin that the reason why the New York Giants couldn't spend the money on Saquon Barkley is because they absolutely had to spend some of that money in other departments. But this takes me to another tweet that I saw online from one of the homies. And he said, this interview comes to show or continues to show what Shane should have realized but didn't. It was naive or inexperienced, but you don't tell a player to test the market and complain about how hard the last negotiation was if it's a player you really want and respect. He also continued to say he tried to have both of his ways, and I totally agree with that. And I think that comes with pressure from the organization, from the owner, from John Mara. John Mara clearly wanted to keep Saquon Barkley on this roster, and Joe Schoen felt that it would be better to allocate those resources towards other needs, other positions that he valued higher than the running back position. And I've really got no beef with that. I just think the timing does not align with signing Saquon Barkley to a contract. I just think that's really what it is. And we could have saved a lot of time by not really focusing on this stuff, especially during the Hard Knocks episodes. And Saquon did say in this interview that they kind of made it seem like these negotiations were coming down to the wire, going back and forth, when in reality, it was just a 1-2 time conversation thing until they got on the phone. And Joe Schoen had told Saquon Barkley that, hey, we're going to let you test the market. Now, I think anybody who's ever worked under any organization, if your organization were to tell you, hey, man, go out there and test the job market, go try to find another job. We don't think you're worth this money over here, getting paid this salary. And then you went over there and actually got paid what you were worth. What would be the point of coming back to the old organization? So I do get Saquon's sentiments. It's just unfortunate that the Giants didn't, see him as a future cornerstone piece like they viewed Dexter Lawrence, like they viewed Andrew Thomas, and for me, unfortunately, like they viewed Daniel Jones. Now, the narrative going around the New York Giants front office is that they're allocating these funds towards improving and building up the offensive line for the future. Now, Jermaine Illuminor signed a 2-year deal, and the Giants and Joe Schoen were trying to get him to sign a 3-year deal. Illuminor preferred a 2-year deal, and to me, that's a little bit of a red flag right there. John Runyon is on a 3-year deal, $30 million. That's a good chunk of money, obviously, that they took from the Saquon pot probably to allocate for John Runyon. I like that signing. I think he's a pretty decent guard, but I do question why wasn't he extended by the Green Bay Packers? Why did they feel like they could move on after drafting, not drafting, but starting a younger quarterback in Jordan Love, who's going into a contract year here? Why not keep those pieces around him? He was a bit of a rotational kind of lineman throughout the year. They had a rookie getting some snaps over John Runyon as well. And then you look at Aaron Stinney, who was brought in to play some guard on just a 1-year deal. So for me, I'm questioning right now, is this a long-term plan or is this a last-ditch effort for Daniel Jones to maybe go out here and try to show that he is the future franchise quarterback with some pieces that are kind of not perennial, not top of the line offensive line pieces, but pieces nonetheless that can, probably go out there and be salvageable. And Daniel Jones could probably go win some games. Now, you got to think about this with the running back stuff too. It's like, okay, you couldn't pay Saquon Barkley the guarantees that he wanted, which would have been about $24 million guaranteed, give or take. But then we did go out there and we spent big money on an edge rusher. And if these offensive line moves are not for the current roster, right? Like if the front office feels that this roster is not currently going to contend for a Super Bowl, then I also got a question, why would you go out there and spend $28 million a year on an edge rusher that might not be here when it comes time to actually win some games and actually go try to make a Super Bowl push? So I think that the Giants could possibly be getting themselves into a little bit more of the same, where things don't align. And, you sign a quarterback contract with Daniel Jones, but you don't have enough offensive line pieces to protect him in his first year on that deal. So now you kind of panic. You go out there, you allow your best weapon to walk in free agency, and you're trying to supplement that with a few offensive linemen. I won't call them ragtag offensive linemen, but you know what I'm saying, for lack of a better word. But I do think that it's time, that Joe Schoen and the rest of this front office get things a little bit tightened up so that not only they can see the direction of this franchise, but the fans can also see the direction of this franchise. The analysts can see that. The general managers across the league. Right now, the New York Giants are very much so being looked at like a joke around the NFL. They are at the bottom of a lot of lists when it comes to, rankings, whether it be one unit or the other, one side of the ball or the other. This has been one of the more infuriating off seasons for me as a fan, because looking for positives, there isn't really many positives out there outside of this defensive line. Hopefully they can go out there and get after the quarterback. So before I move to that next topic, let me just kind of scroll back, just see what y'all are talking about here. I always got to get the people's voice here one time and see what y'all saying here in the chat. Let me see. So Big Dash says, I absolutely believe those offensive or those O-line signings were for Daniel Jones. Yeah, I'm right there with you on that. Door Gunner says the Giants should have picked another O-lineman. Yeah, I mean, when you talk about building a team for the future and you assess the offensive line as the worst unit and where you need the most help, but then you go into the draft and you don't draft any offensive linemen, I thought that was just definitely puzzling. I know they went out there and spent a little money in the free agent department to bring in a few players, but if you're thinking about the true future, you would think that you don't necessarily got to spend a first-round pick on an offensive lineman. I'm definitely not one of the people that was in the camp of go out there and draft Joe Alt, but you would think that they wouldn't draft for need so much, and they would draft for the future and try to go after best players available and whatnot. And I feel like in rounds 2 and 3 and even round 4, I don't think that they went out and tried to go BPA. I think they tried to go out there and address some of the needs that were immediate needs for this team to kind of salvage the investment that they have already put into the quarterback and the lack of an investment into that offensive line. So definitely puzzling. I'm right there with you on that one, Door Gunner. 7 says, I hate he went to Philly. Most Giants fans hate that. I definitely feel you on that. Peter says, the O-line moves are a short-term Band-Aid on a long-term problem. Damn, that's a bar right there, Peter. That's it, man. Big shout out to you, because that's it. Definitely that's it. 59 Ways to Groove says, Evan Neal is like the crushed Huggy in the tire. Sounds and looks good, but whole time destroying the bike. I like that. Kind of like a fix-a-flat type of vibe right there. Shout out 59 Ways to Groove. DeIlla says, I'm just upset that we lost McKinney. I really thought this secondary was building something special with Banks, Pinnock, and McKinney. I agree with you. They were. And, in Hard Knocks thus far, there has been very little to no mention of Xavier McKinney, another cornerstone piece that a lot of fans looked at as, a guy who was a foundation on this defense, myself included, and just let him walk in free agency. And it seems like he didn't even have a thought of coming back to the New York Giants. They showed a little bit of negotiation with Saquon Barkley, I guess a back and forth. They didn't do any of that with Xavier McKinney. It was, man, as soon as free agency starts, Xavier McKinney is a Green Bay Packer. And I can't help but think about some of the statements that Mike Lombardi said about that whole disease of me thing. A lot of people wanted to point to Dexter Lawrence and wanted to point to Andrew Thomas's contracts as, proof as to why there was no disease of me in that locker room. But now you're looking at, your best player in the secondary in Xavier McKinney and your best offensive weapon, both of those guys walked with no problems. And one of them signed with a division rivalry, or division rival. I do think that those are things you got to question. I'm willing to sit back and be at least a little bit patient throughout this year, but, I don't want to be that guy to say I told you so when this, when this season is over and the New York Giants fall short to where their goals are. So we'll see how those things go. But things are alarming right now. Things are definitely puzzling. And yeah, that's a great point you bring up, to Illa, definitely. And make sure y'all go subscribe to the Illa, man. Just raw, uncut New York Giants content, man. I definitely dig a lot of his content, and he deserves a lot more traction over there because he puts out great stuff. Let me see what else we got. J. Michael Phoenix is in the building. Let me see what J. Michael saying. He said, the line is for DJ. That's evident. What's your opinion on Neil being on PUP? Yeah, I mean, I think the reason, first I'll start with the first half here. The reason why I don't think it's evident, right, is because they have talked about building towards the future. And we've got inklings that they wanted to trade up and draft a quarterback in this draft. So I don't understand why we would waste like $40 million on just some guys for a quarterback that more than likely is not going to be here after 2025. I don't understand that part. Opinions on Evan Neal being on the PUP list. It is what it is, man. Like, this dude's been hurt. This dude's played terrible football. He has not been an asset for the New York Giants offensive line. I can remember going into that draft, everybody was like, man, go just draft 8 offensive linemen. Just spend every draft pick on an offensive lineman. And when we got Evan Neal and when we got Kayvon Thibodeau, a lot of people thought that we completely killed that draft, myself included, at least from a first-round perspective. But now you go back and you look at that in hindsight, Evan Neal looks like one of the worst drafted players from that entire draft. I mean, you could go through all the rounds for real, not even just the first round. So that's unfortunate for the Giants. You know, it's another hole that we're going to have to address. And I think that's another reason why a lot of Giants fans wanted to go offensive line in this draft. But unfortunately, we didn't address either side of the trenches in this draft. But yeah, it is what it is. There's not much we can do. You know, the Giants are banking on Evan Neal again. And I just don't understand it. Shout out Max Webster. He says, other than AT, when was the last even decent offensive lineman the Giants drafted? I mean, yeah, you got to go back. Pugh could be a guy. And you could decent. I thought Will Hernandez played some decent ball his first year, and you saw when he went to the Arizona Cardinals, he proved to be a pretty decent player. I think it's more of an organizational failure than it is the actual players that are being drafted, because it's not like the Giants are going out here and just like drafting guys like out of position, like, you know, taking a guy who was projected 3rd rounder, drafting him in the early 2nd or early 1st, especially when it comes to offensive line. In some other positions I can think of, you know, I do think there was a little bit of a reach, but nothing too crazy. So I think this is more organizational than it is, you know, harping on one player. I just think the Giants have issues with developing offensive linemen amongst other positions, but offensive line being one of the most drastic. Real People said X got a nice deal. I see Friars agreeing with Dash on this one, but he said, but also the other free agent signing are giving us signs of here's a 3 to 5 year window. Let's prove ownership. We can build and compete. Yeah, that's the part that I kind of question. Like, if you're going to bring in offensive linemen, it can't just be for Daniel Jones. And the out for Daniel Jones is after this season. When his dead cap hit gets lowered, they'll be able to part ways with him for just, you know, about $20 million rather than the $69 million dead cap hit, as long as he's healthy going into 2025. And I know fans like me, that's what we're hoping for sure. Let me see what else we got here. G537 says, what do you think about Tyrone Tracy? Love the tape. Great rate of broken tackles. This kid is raw talent for sure. Not very decisive from what I saw on tape. A guy who definitely needs to just learn leverage in the NFL and understand like how to just take what's there for him. But once he does get in the right direction, Tyrone Tracy's a really good runner. Also has a pass catching background, playing wide receiver for most of his college tenure. Older running back, but has a lot of tread left on the tires. You know, didn't play running back much. I think he only had like 17 carries all the way up until his 6th year in college. So definitely, you know, a guy who can be an older running back and see success, something like Raheem Mostert, I would imagine, or something like Austin Eckler. I think could be a gadget for us moving forward. That would be my goal for him this season, is to be able to find a way to utilize him in the passing game, coming out the backfield, maybe taking some of those carries that Wando Robinson had last year, and relinquish some of those running duties from Wandale, so that, you know, you got another gadget, another weapon that defense has got a scheme for. So that's where I'm at on that one. Let's see here. Let's get off into this next Giant overreaction so we could keep this pushing. I always say I'm going to try to get y'all out of here 10 minutes before the show starts, but we always go down to the 2-minute warning. It's kind of crazy. But let's go ahead and get off into this next one here, man. And this one comes from the homie Base. I definitely want to get this comment on the screen because we were talking about this in the spaces, and I thought it was just a great topic. So let's go ahead and get off into this next one. So this one comes from my homie Base 718. He hosts most of the Giants Twitter spaces, the rational ones, I will add. Shout out to the homie Pace one time, man. He's been holding it down for a long time. Just ecstatic that he invited me into this community to be able to chop it up and talk ball with them on a regular basis. It just makes me better at what I do. And Bass says, the Giants keep saying it's a process for the future. When can we say the future is now? And I thought this was a really good question to pretty much just say, all right, when are we going to apply pressure on Joe Schoen? We're 3 drafts in now, okay? 0 superstars. You maybe have 2 to 3, I'll say 2 of them pending right now, and that would be Kayvon Thibodeau and Deonte Banks, who could possibly be a cornerback 1. Most of our cornerstone pieces come from Dave Gettleman, and I think that I don't want to say that that's like a throwing shade at this regime, but I do think that you have to be able to prove that you can draft talent, bring them in, develop them, and turn them into not necessarily just superstars, but just players that are effective. Like, you could use Micah McFadden as an example of how this particular regime brought a guy in that a lot of the fans were kind of down on after the rookie year, and you saw the development, start to pay dividends later on. And Micah McFadden last year proved that he deserved to be a starter on the field, along with Bobby Okereke. And you bring in Brian Burns, and those are good moves, but we need them to start to show results. And I am in agreement here with the homie Bass one time. Like, right now, exiting the 2024 draft, Malik Neighbors, he has to be a hit. If Malik Neighbors turns into, I don't even want to go as egregious and say like a Kadarius Toney, but if he turns into like a Wan'Dale Robinson after 2 seasons, and he's a guy who's putting up 600 yards. Let's say Darius Slayton. That's better. A guy from the outside who can do it all, right? That's going to be a major blemish on the New York Giants front office. You spent top 10 draft capital. It was pick number 6. So top 10 draft capital on a wide receiver. And we've seen these go both ways. We've seen things go the Jamar Chase route, where you hit the ground running as a rookie and you just completely balling out. You automatically put your name into that top 10 wide receiver category. But we've also seen guys like Corey Davis get overdrafted, come out here. And not to say that Malik Neighbors was overdrafted, but Corey Davis was a guy that they thought he was going to be able to contribute. And a couple of years later, this guy's pretty much out of the league. I remember he retired last year, but I heard something about him coming back. So it is pivotal that Malik Neighbors is an actual hit. And, I just went through these drafts earlier today when Bass was talking about this on Twitter, and just started counting up picks and seeing where we've been addressing, most of our attention to as far as these drafts go. You got 11 picks in 2022, 7 picks in 2023, and 6 draft picks in 2024. 7 defensive backs. And these names, just outside of Deonte Banks, these are mostly misses. Cordell Flott, Dane Belton, Trey Hawkins III, Javarius Owens, Andrew Phillips, who will have to wait and see, Tyler Nubin, who will have to wait and see, and obviously Deonte Banks, who is looking like he can be a cornerback 1 in this league. 4 offensive linemen that you've drafted: Evan Neal, Joshua Zitu, Marcus McKeithen, and John Michael Smits. None of those guys look like they're on their way to being bookend at their position. None of them right now. And especially Evan Neal, who's on the PUP list right now, looking like it's about a wrap for him, to be honest. You got 3 wide receivers, one of them coming out of this draft: Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt, Malik Neighbors. 1 wide receiver every year they've been here. Whoever just said, I think it was Deilla, talking about these draft picks, it's time for them to start panning out now. This is facts. Like, Jalen Hyatt has to enter that maturation in his career now. And I know guys in the 3rd round normally get a little bit of time to develop, but the New York Giants don't have time to wait on this. These guys were drafted to fill voids of other players. When you had Sterling Shepard on the roster, that's why they brought in guys like Wan'Dale Robinson to be able to replace him full time. And that's exactly what's about to happen. Jalen Hyatt, you got to be able to show you can do a little bit more than just take the top off of defense. If you're going to be limited in your route tree and running routes just down the field, well, then you got to be a Ted Ginn Jr., and we need a big play a game, at least. And that's going to take him getting the targets. Now, you had 3 linebackers drafted as well: Micah McFadden, Darian Beavers, and Darius Muasau. We don't know about Muasau yet, but I don't have high hopes for him, especially in year 1. I could imagine him being a special teams type of player. That's probably about it. Darian Beavers blew out his knee after what was looking like a really good offseason campaign. And Micah McFadden has been pretty decent. So when you look at the amount of draft picks that they've, allocated towards the linebacker position, it's been okay. You could say at least you've hit on a 1/3 of them. You had Darian Beavers, who was looking like he was going to be a hit until that injury kind of had him, take a step back. And we'll have to see if he can come on the field this year and contribute. And as far as defensive line goes, you got 3 defensive linemen: Kayvon Thibodeau, DJ Davidson, Jordan Riley, and outside of Kayvon, not that great there either. You have 2 tight ends that you have drafted in Daniel Bellinger and Theo Johnson, 2 running backs in Eric Gray and Tyrone Tracy, and a lot of these guys just have not hit. So it's about time that some of these guys start to pay dividends. I think we also got to place some emphasis on this coaching staff, the depths of this coaching staff. When we're talking about guys that aren't contributing, guys that aren't getting carries, they literally had Eric Gray just returning kicks last year. I don't understand, why a guy that you're spending draft capital on, I believe Eric Gray was a 4th, maybe Eric Gray was a 5th rounder that year. I think he was a 5th rounder that year. But nonetheless, should be seeing some snaps on the field. And this year, without a Saquon Barkley out there, we'll see. I just hope that they don't neglect the running back position. It was unfortunate that you just had Saquon being a bell cow last season, and guys like Breida and guys like Gray were just, not even really an option to even just relinquish some of the pressure off Saquon and take some of the carries. So we'll see how that goes. But these drafts haven't been good. So I got to agree with what Base is saying here. It has not been good. It really has not been good so far. And we need some of these draft picks to really just start to pan out. All right, so we got about a good, 25 minutes before this episode starts here. Y'all know I had to talk about the clip on a trailer that came out today. A lot of talk about this. It seems like Hard Knocks does a really good job of splitting up the fan base. People seeing things very differently, polar opposite from one side of the coin to the next. For me, I kind of saw this for what it is, but this one was about some trade talks with the New York Giants and with the New England Patriots. Having the Giants trade up to number 3 to go out there and get their quarterback. Let's take a look at this clip from Joe Shane on the call with Patriots general manager Elliott Wolf.
So what's going on? You guys still listening, or you guys make a decision? What are you thinking?
I think we're pretty heavy leaning and we're sitting here thinking.
Okay.
But again, if you like 1, 2, 3 this year, 1, 2 next, exactly.
So, but it's gonna be something crazy like that.
It would probably have to be pretty significant.
Okay, so like a 1 this year, or not that obviously it'd be 6 this year, a 1 next year, and then something more this year is not going to do it. It's got to be multiples in 25.
Just we're in this situation where we just probably set a bigger quarterback.
All right, so that's Joe Shane on the phone with the Patriots general manager. Shout out to my homie one time. They call him Pretty Ricky. Pretty Ricky, what they call him. Pretty Ricky is probably like the best insider you could possibly follow right now on, I was going to say Giants Twitter, but I'm going to just say NFL Twitter, because I'm starting to see that some of these like national, breaking news, breaking stories type of dudes, the Adam Schefters and all of them, they starting to take some information from the homie Pretty Ricky one time. Pretty Ricky also reported that a quarterback is going to break the quarterback market here and reset it. And I saw a lot of those dudes, talking about the same story he was talking about. So I know Pretty Ricky got some insider information here one time. So take this with a grain of salt. He did say that he was wrong on something with the Drake May situation with the New York Giants, but he said this is from information that he knows. General manager Elliott Wolf and head coach Gerard Mayo both wanted to trade back to get more draft capital and take J.J. McCarthy, but the Crafts wanted Drake May at pick number 3 and overruled Elliott Wolf and Gerard Mayo. So you can definitely take that with a grain of salt, but Pretty Ricky has come to be one of the people that I trust wholeheartedly. Broke the Brian Burns news, has broken so many stories in the offseason. Shout out to Pretty Ricky for keeping this offseason extremely, extremely entertaining and popping up in some of the spaces with us, man. And, I know a lot of people doubted him when he first popped in that space, but ever since then, when those Brian Burns stories turned out to be factual, Pretty Ricky has definitely been on the good graces of, all the New York Giants fans that I know. Now, I think there's no doubt that the New York Giants were going to trade up, and they wanted to get Drake May. We know that. And when you saw the trailer clip from last Hard Knocks episode 3, when they went to the end of the show, and they showed Brian Dable talking about, would he trade up for Jaden Daniels? And he was like, yeah, I would. His ears rose up, looked like a puppy dog. He looked extremely excited. Now, shout out to my homie Deilla, who's in the chat right now, who made a video about this earlier today, and I think he could possibly be spot on. And we're going to find out tonight on this Hard Knocks episode. And again, for those of y'all that need the Hard Knocks link, hopefully one of my mods in the chat can copy that second link that I pasted there one time. You guys can, take the plug and plug it into the wall and see what you need to see tonight. But the Illa was speculating that clip from the trailer is possibly a situation where the New York Giants might have heard that the Washington Commanders might pull the trigger on Drake May, and would they still be interested in trading with the New England Patriots for that number 3 pick to then draft Jaden Daniels? And speculating that Brian Daboll was absolutely on board for that. Now, we don't know if, we're going to find out tonight, but we don't know just yet if that meant trade up with the Commanders at 2, who I live in Washington, D.C. I don't think they was coming off that pick. There was never any speculation on that. So I do think that Dilla makes a really good point here. We'll find out tonight for sure. And if you guys got a little time, man, go show some love to Dilla. Go subscribe to his channel. But this is what I'm getting from all of this. Yeah, Brian Daboll wanted to trade up for Drake May. Yeah, Brian Daboll wanted to trade up for Jaden Daniels. He would have done it. I do think that there was a cap on the other 3 quarterbacks outside of Caleb Williams, obviously. But on the other 3 guys, Bo Nix, J.J. McCarthy, and Michael Penix, I think there was a cutoff point that Brian Daboll probably didn't want to go to. Because if you're willing to trade up for one of these guys, and you think that maybe a Michael Penix is on the same level as one of these guys, you would have absolutely pulled the trigger at 6 and drafted a quarterback and then dipped into the second round to get your wide receiver. So I do think that there was a cutoff point. But what I'm starting to see a little bit of here is, and this is just my speculation and my opinion on it, I don't think Brian Daboll is all in on Daniel Jones. And I think, they're kind of hiding it a little bit. I said the same thing about Brandon Brown as well, who every time they're talking about the quarterback position on these Hard Knocks episodes, he's saying, little statements to me that hold a lot of weight, just like, well, whoever's throwing him the ball and things like that. And I think that they were positioned to try to go out here and get a quarterback. Now, the Giants front office, you can tell that they view Daniel Jones as a potential franchise quarterback. But for me, I don't think they view Daniel Jones and how he has played the quarterback position as a broken pipe. I've been using this metaphor for a couple of weeks. They're looking at like a leaky pipe, and that's why they're trying to patch up this offensive line, patch up these weapons to try to get one last-ditch effort for Daniel Jones moving forward. We'll see how that goes. I do think that, to go back to some of the comments I said in the beginning of the show about Dan Orlovsky saying, when you try to change a quarterback's play style, it normally doesn't work out. And I think that's kind of happening with Daniel Jones, who never really had the elite characteristics, but did have decent straight line speed. I'll say good straight line speed, and could showed that he could do things with his legs at the cost of possibly being injured. I got a text from my homie Kyle Pizzle this morning. I want to say it was either this morning or yesterday morning. And Kyle Pizzle liked to just throw me little nuggets of how he's feeling. And he said Daniel Jones is going to have a big year. And I was just like, really? I'm like, this is random. Why are you just throwing this out here? He said, yes. He said, we finally potentially have a pass rush, something we haven't had in years. He's finally got a wide receiver 1. The O-line looks better. And the team, if healthy, is better than the 2022 team. Now, I don't know about that. And I told him, I'm looking at the Giants as about a 6-win team. He said, man, you crazy. And I said, why you think I'm crazy for that? I'm like, bro, I'm just kind of just explaining to you that, like, I don't want to have my heart broken by setting my expectations too high for the New York Giants. It's hard to tell what this offense is going to do without Saquon Barkley. It's hard to predict what Malik Neighbors is going to bring to this passing attack. Is that going to snap Daniel Jones out of it, and make him the kind of quarterback that's going to be able to push the ball down the field? I truly don't know. How much better is this offensive line? Is there depth on this offensive line? I mean, Evan Neal is still terrible, and I know Pizzle sent me that text before hearing that Evan Neal was on the PUP list, but he's still been terrible. Is our quarterback going to be as mobile as he once was coming off this ACL injury? And I know Daniel Jones is not the, most lateral moving type of quarterback, but when your knee has just been blown out, I don't know if you can come into the season with having that same type of confidence on that knee. No more Saquon. These are all questions that are going to have to be answered, that I think a lot of these are going to have to be answered if the New York Giants have a shot this year. And honestly, with the schedule combined on that and the way that the injuries up front have killed us, I don't know if the Giants have what it takes to be able to be a team that can push to even try to make the playoffs. But I will say I know this is not a Super Bowl roster quite yet. And a lot of people who have been patient on the quarterback position, they like to look at the San Francisco 49ers model while discrediting Brock Purdy, I'll add. And they say you can build the team around the quarterback first and then get the quarterback when everything else around him is right. But I think what a lot of people overlook is the timing that comes with that. The players that are already have been extended and are on contract, the rookies that you're drafting that are going to be coming up for their own payday, guys like Kayvon Thibodeau, guys like Wan'Dale Robinson in a couple of years here, I think that you have to find a way to have balance in timing and the players that you acquire, and I think the Giants have been doing a pretty I won't be harsh and say a terrible job, but they haven't been doing the greatest job, is what I'll say. Now, let's go ahead and get right off into it because I know we only got about a good 10, 15 minutes before I get y'all up out of here. Again, the link to get you plugged into tonight's episode, go ahead and check it out. It's pinned to the chat. I will pin it to this video after this stream goes off air for those of y'all that are going to be watching this later that are catching the replay. And that link should be good until it ain't. So, yeah, definitely use that plug. Do what you got to do to see what you got to see tonight because this is going to be a very exciting episode of Hard Knocks. And it's kind of bittersweet because it's coming to an end. We're down to our last 2 episodes. But the great thing about that means that the season is right around the corner. Training camp starts tomorrow. I will be out there for the Detroit Lions joint practices at the top of the month in August, and I might pop out there for a couple of more. I'm still waiting on some tickets to get delivered. And for those of y'all that don't know, I'm doing the documentary on the NFC East, the in-season documentary. So I'll be at Eagles camp on August 1st. I'll be at Commanders camp at the end of the month as well. And I'm going to pop up the New York Giants camp, and I'm going to try to interview as many fans and as many people that are interested in NFC East football as I can to try to bring y'all some next level type of content. But let's go ahead and get off into this next one here, and then I'll get y'all up out of here. I think I got, one? I got 2 more. I think the last one y'all are going to enjoy, too. All right, let's run through this real quick. Let's talk about the homie Kayvon Thibodeau one time. And let me see. I see we got a couple of star chats here one time. Let's get these super chats out the way. What's going on, Danny Thomas? Hope all is well with you. Appreciate the $5 super chat one time. He said, Giants fans living in the Bay Area, what player surprises us this coming season on the offense and the defense? All right, right off the top, I think a player that could surprise us on the offensive side of the ball is Tyrone Tracy. Like I talked about earlier, could be a great gadget, a guy that comes in, has major, huge impact plays, might not get the ball a ton, but I think that he's the one that could surprise. I might have said Theo Johnson, but he's entering the season on the PUP. I think they still got some question marks at the tight end position. Defensive-wise, let me see who could surprise on the defensive side of the ball. I'm going to go with Azeez Ojulari. And as we're breaking down this Kayvon segment here, I'm going to go with Azeez Ojulari, who I think could benefit from having a couple guys out there starting and coming in as a rotational edge piece and could get after the quarterback. He's already proven that. Hasn't been healthy during his tenure here with the New York Giants, but since he's been here, I want to say he's got more sacks than Kayvon Thibodeau does. So we all know Azeez Ojulari can get after the quarterback. I do think he's more of the prototype type of build edge rusher that I prefer as well, too. But it's great to have all of them in that room. Shout out to Danny Thomas one time, representing all the way from the Bay. And what's an Authentic in the Beard show without the homie Two-Toe? Y'all like that? In the building one time, man, with the $4.99 super chat. He says, massive salutes and respects to ATTB and all diehard Giants fans in America. Greetings from me. Let me see what we got here. Greetings from me and my fam here in Princeton, and please slap all stinky Boyd's losers, man. Big shout out to Tudo one time, man. Appreciate you pulling up, rocking out with us, Tudo. You know what it is. The #1 Giants supporter on all of YouTube right there. All right. So let's talk about Kayvon Thibodeau one time. And can Kayvon Thibodeau take this leap and become a superstar edge rusher this season? I don't doubt that it can happen at some point, but I want to know if it can happen this season. I was looking at some numbers. Shout out to the homie. I can't remember whose video this came from. I'm going to make sure to go back and put his link in the description because he got some great content over there. But he was talking about Kayvon Thibodeau pretty much having the same amount of pressures in both seasons, but the sack numbers just jumping way up in his 2023 campaign. Now, 2023 pressures from the 2022 draft class. Of all the people that are rushing the quarterback from the 2022 draft class, Kayvon Thibodeau is at the bottom as far as pressures go. And if you guys remember when we had the joint practice with the Detroit Lions the last go-around, a lot of people had questions for what was going on with their defensive front versus our defensive front, right? And I don't mean like literally, but just like how aggressive each side of the ball was playing for each team, right? And a lot of people were saying, when I see Aiden Hutchinson getting after the quarterback, it don't look like what Kayvon Thibodeau is doing. And there is some truth to that for sure. When you look at Kayvon Thibodeau's pressures in 2023, in comparison to everybody else in his draft class, he was number 8. That's down at the bottom of all of them. He had 44. Aiden Hutchinson, with similar amount of snaps, had 101. That's a major, major difference. And George Karlaftis, he had 64. Trayvon Walker had 59. Mafe had 58 from the Seahawks. Jermaine Johnson had 56. Nick Bonita had 47, and Devontae Wyatt had 45, and then there's Kayvon Thibodeau at 44. Now, Kayvon had more pass rushing snaps than every player in his draft class except Aiden Hutchinson. And Aiden also had 11 and a half sacks. Now, when you go back and you revisit the 2023 season, you're going to see a lot of people that are going to say, oh, well, Kayvon had 11 and a half sacks as well. I think he's the same kind of player as Aiden Hutchinson. And that's why you have to turn on the tape and really look at what's going on. There was a sack that I saw against the Washington Commanders that was credited to Kayvon Thibodeau in this exact same video. And it's all Dexter Lawrence, literally. And I'm not trying to throw shade at Kayvon Thibodeau, but this play was all Dexter Lawrence. Spins Taylor Heineke around, or whoever the quarterback, wasn't Taylor Heineke, spins the quarterback around. It was Sam Howell. And then Kayvon Thibodeau kind of just gets a wrap up, throw him on the ground, and the sack does not go to Dexter Lawrence. It ends up going to Kayvon Thibodeau. Now, 6.5 of Kayvon Thibodeau's sacks last year came against Washington and the Jets, who both had porous offensive lines. And when you look at his numbers in comparison to 2022 to 2023, he only had 4 more pressures in 2023. He had 44 pressures in 2023. He had 40 in 2022. And remember, the knock in the Wink Martindale defensive scheme is that guys don't get to double-digit sacks in the Wink Martindale scheme. So you got to give Kayvon his props for doing that. But he did the 44 pressures and 11 and a half sacks on 520 pass rushing snaps. In 2022, he had 40 pressures and 4 sacks on just over 100 less pass rushing snaps. He had 409. But when you look at his win rate, his pressure win rate, it went down last year. It went from 9.7% to 8.4%. So I do think that this is going to be the most pivotal year for Kayvon Thibodeau. He's got to find a way to be able to make that leap. Now you really got no excuse. With Brian Burns on the opposite side of you, I think that should open up things for Kayvon Thibodeau. I'd like to see a guy who can add a couple of more pass moves to his repertoire and be able to utilize the bull rush. More importantly, I want to see some more inside moves, not only from Kayvon Thibodeau, but also from Brian Burns, who I charted every one of his snaps from 2023, and he definitely has an issue winning to the inside. I saw him at his camp showing his inside spin move, which it looks pretty, but he doesn't get to the quarterback a lot while doing that move. I like when he sets up these tackles to the outside after a few reps, and then he just gives you a little jab step, goes right to the inside. That's how he normally wins. So I'd like to see both those guys win. And most importantly, these two dudes, they have got to find a way to help stop that run. We know there's going to be extra emphasis on the linebackers within the Shane Bowen scheme, but these two dudes need to be able to seal and hold the edge, especially when you get these teams that like to run those zone running concepts right at us. They're going to run right at Brian Burns. They're going to run right at Kayvon Thibodeau, and they're going to try to exploit our weaknesses, which has been stopping the run for the past couple of years. So we'll see how that goes. I will say, in the past, I've said 2 speed edge rushers. You really can't think of too many duos that were that good. But looking at the deals that Hassan Reddick was looking for and the numbers he was looking for today, it made me think about it. When Brian Burns and Hassan Reddick were on the same defense together, they had a lot of success over there with Carolina. So I do think that it's possible to get it done with 2 speed edge rushers, but we'll see. A lot of emphasis going to be on these 2 guys to stop the run this year for sure. Shout out to Peter. I see you, fam. I'm trying, man. Trying to cook up these numbers, man. You know what it is, Peter. I appreciate all the support, fam. All right, so one last one. I definitely want y'all opinion on this. This one going to take 2 minutes, and then I'm going to get y'all up out of here. For those of y'all that are just tuning in, the link is in the chat for you to be able to get to where you need to get tonight to get to that plug and be able to view this episode 4. It's going to be an amazing one. I cannot wait. We're just under, 10 minutes before this episode starts. I'll be dumping out clips to my Twitter live during the show as well and voicing some of my opinions as well. But let's go ahead and get off into this last one, and then I'll get y'all up out of here, and we can, all go in and, crack a beer and enjoy this this Hard Knocks episode 4 one time. All right, now we kind of talked about this one just a little bit earlier with the super chat that came in from the homie. We definitely appreciate that. But I want to know what y'all think in chat. And you can just spam the names in here, and then I'm going to get y'all up out of here in 2 minutes. which Giants 2024 draft pick, not named Malik Neighbors, will have the most impact for this season? I kind of answered this already with the Tyrone Tracy vibes. I thought it could be possibly Theo Johnson, who has a really good skill set as a tight end. He did not get to display too much in college over there at Penn State. A lot of competition in that room the whole time that he's been there. But I like Theo Johnson's, catch radius, the body build, the type. He's 6'6", 250. He could definitely be a, weapon in the pass attack, something like a T.J. Hawkinson light, but also be able to, hit the ground running as a blocker as well. I do think he does lack a little bit of bend at the waist as far as run blocking goes, but I do think he can find a way to improve that. Tyler Nubin, I was extremely excited about him coming in as the number one safety in this draft. Nick Saban also said that as well, had him on his all 2024 draft team as well as the starting safety. It just seems that, with the way things were going in minicamp, I don't see the hype around Tyler Nubin, so I'm just pumping the brakes a little bit around Tyler Nubin. Andrew Phillips, a guy who didn't have not one interception in college, only a few PBUs as well. Not the greatest tackler, but he has a nice physical build. I think he could maybe surprise some people, but it wouldn't surprise me if Andrew Phillips is not starting in the slot when we start the season and they go with a little bit more experience at that position. They did bring in the homie from the Jacksonville Jaguars, Trey Herndon, who could possibly see some snaps at the slot as well, so I'm not too high on Andrew Phillips. Darius Muasawa, like I said earlier, is probably going to be relegated to playing some special teams. And Tyrone Tracy, I think that's my guy. I think that's definitely the guy that I think could surprise this year. But look, man, I'm going to throw this out there. I think when all's said and done, this draft class is not going to be good. I've been thinking about it more and more, and I just see these names on this list, and none of these guys to me scream, I'm going to be a superstar outside of Malik Neighbors. Tyrone Tracy could possibly be a guy, but, just waiting that long to be at the running back position, former wide receiver, there's going to be a lot of adjustment to make. I just don't think this draft class is going to pan out to be a better one. And I think when we look at this in the long run, this is going to be the draft, I think, where they look at Joe Schoen and go, you could have changed things here if you would have went and drafted your quarterback and bought yourself a little bit more time. And when you see Joe Schoen in the office, man, he just looks like a guy that's like, I can't say careless, but just he looks like a guy that his job security is not on the line. Like, you're calling up the Patriots general manager to talk about a major move in trading up, and it's just like all giggles and non-serious vibes. I just don't get that. And for me, a guy who runs a business and is about business, if I call you up and there's something detrimental to the future success of my business, it's not going to be a laughing type of conversation. It's going to be a serious conversation about how we need to trade up and get there. So we'll see. I see some Theo Johnsons. I see some Tyrone Tracys. I see some Tyler Nubin. Shout out to Marjorie one time in the building, the queen representing. Toxic talking about Tyler Nubin. Max Webster says Nubin. We'll see. And Nubin's got some real big shoes to fill, man. Real big shoes to fill. But we'll see how that goes. The episode is about to get cracking off here in just under 2 minutes. Make sure y'all get the y'all TV, man, so y'all can see this episode like I'm about to just go over here and just straight up geek out. I mean, this is the stuff that football nerds like myself, we just can't get enough of. And like I said, it's bittersweet that this is going to be the second to last episode. But I can't wait till these get put out on an outlet where I can just keep binging them and keep watching them over and look for more details and more nuances. Again, if you need a vibe to check out, what's going on tonight on the Hard Knocks and you need the plug, the link is tied to the top of this stream and whatnot. And I'll make sure that when this goes off to put that there again. Again, man, thank all of y'all for pulling up and rocking out with me, man. I see my day ones always in the building, always supporting here, man, over at Authentic in the Beard. I will be back on Bleacher Report tomorrow at 11 a.m. doing a recap of the Hard Knocks episode. I might pop up here on YouTube and kind of discuss some of the same topics and whatnot. But just keep your eyes peeled. Y'all know the Giant Overreactions will be here every Monday. We couldn't do one this week. Really didn't have no great topics for y'all, but I did figure I'd come here and chop it up with y'all before Hard Knocks and get y'all pointed in the right direction. So, again, man, enjoy the show. Y'all know how we end every damn episode over here at Authentic in the Beard, man. Keep raising that bar. Keep living those dreams because the universe flows in Technicolor and surround sound. Rest in peace to the podcast GOAT Combat Jack. And that's a wrap, y'all. Spam them biceps in the chat. Y'all know what it is, man. I'll catch y'all on the next stream. Until then, man, y'all enjoy y'all evening. I'll see y'all when I see y'all. Y'all be good, man. Peace.